Hi, it's Luke from Treeline Outdoors. We're here today with James from Racks Unlimited, and in this video we're going to be exploring how to safely mount your rooftop tent on your vehicle.
And that's going to include going over all of the different styles of roofs that we find on today's vehicles, as well as all of the different options for mounting rooftop systems to all the different styles on modern vehicles.
All right, let's get to it. So James, tell us more about what dynamic weight rating means and what static weight rating means and what people need to understand and know when they're picking crossbars for their vehicles.
For sure. So dynamic and static weight ratings are two very different things. The dynamic rating is referring to the amount of weight that you can put up on your crossbar system while you're actually driving down the road. The static rating is going to refer to how much load you can get up on top of the crossbars while the vehicle's not moving, so while you're sleeping in your tent in this case. A couple things to keep in mind with both of those, namely the static rating, is that you're actually only going to be putting about half of your static load onto your crossbars while you're using it. The other half is going to be essentially on the ladder of the tent itself.
Right, because the ladder is part of the support structure, it supports half of the weight that's in the tent. So what exactly does it mean when you have a weight rating like Rhino Rack publishes weight ratings for all of their crossbars? When you have a bar that says, like this one has an 80 kilogram, 160 pound weight rating, what does that mean in practical terms for the customer?
So essentially these days, whenever we see a weight rating, that's referring to a dynamic weight rating. And that's actually one of the things that separates Rhino Rack from most of the other companies, is that a lot of their bar systems, they're comfortable actually giving you a static weight rating, which isn't something that you get through most other companies.
Yeah.
And that just makes it so it's a little bit easier for you to have peace of mind that your rack's actually going to hold you up while you're sleeping in it, for sure.
Okay, so when you get a dynamic weight rating for a bar, is that per bar?
That's always going to be for a full system, and generally that means 2 bars.
Okay.
Usually the assumption with that is you can increase it by 50% by adding a third bar in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And static weight ratings, are they generally how many times greater than, is there a yardstick that one can use? How many times greater is static weight rating compared to dynamic weight rating?
It can kind of be all over the place. If you want a general yardstick, I'd usually say about 3 times is what you can get in terms of static versus dynamic rating. But it does vary from rack to rack. For example, something like one of these guys through a Rhino Rack, which will actually attach to your door. So you'll open up the door and it'll clamp onto the roof that way. It has the dynamic rating capable for most Treeline tents actually at about 165 pounds. But the static rating isn't enough for someone to get in there. They don't actually give you a static rating for it, but we know it's not much more than around double. So just not enough for actual people on top of the roof.
Okay, so these kind of compression fit mounts are not advisable if you're going to put a rooftop tent on your vehicle.
Exactly, yeah. It's got to be something that's going to be a little more permanently mounted, usually bolted into whatever surface it's attached to.
Okay, so why don't we explore all the different systems that are out there for the different roof lines that are on the vehicles. So if you have a car or SUV without any roof systems installed, what is the best rack system to go with?
Perfect. And yeah, if you don't have anything on your roof, that's a situation where most people would jump towards one of these compression fits. So that's where we need to find some sort of alternative where we'll actually mount a foot system directly into the roof instead of using that door and the door jamb. So when you mount into where the sheet metal actually attaches together and where the frame attaches to said sheet metal, you get a much higher weight capacity on there. You can do a dynamic rating of 150 pounds per bar. We'll usually do a two bar system rather, so that gives you 300 pounds. And then the static rating of, once again, about 3 times that. So more than enough for people to get up there.
For any of our tents, really.
Yeah, exactly, for any of them.
Fantastic. So this is a system, if you have a naked roof, you would be mounting a foot pad and then the crossbars to the foot pads.
Yeah, exactly. Right along that section of your roof where the rubber strip runs along to cover up your sheet metal overlapping.
Excellent. So now the next question is, what happens if you have a roof that has an integrated rail? What kind of systems are out there for an integrated roof rail in most SUVs today's SUVs, what do you recommend for that?
For sure. And I mean, by integrated roof rail, that can mean a couple of different things these days. So the first thing that we need to do is distinguish between which kind of roof rail you have. And they would be called either a flush rail or a raised rail. The difference between the two is that a raised rail has a gap underneath the bottom of it. You can essentially tie a string around it. You can't do that with a flush rail. If you have a raised rail, there's a lot of options that'll go on there. If you have a big enough tent, you might not even need crossbars. You could potentially go right onto the raised rails themselves. And if you have the need for crossbars, then you'll just need something that has the capability to clamp onto the rails that still gives you your dynamic rating. This is a better example here, actually. The rail running along the vehicle. You can get it through companies like Rhino-Rack with a couple of different options of bar systems, whether it's your heavy-duty bars or your aerodynamic bars.
Okay.
Always going to be enough to carry any of the Treeline tents out there, though.
So this system basically clamps onto your roof rail and secures and locks.
Exactly, and this is for any of your roof rails that, like I said, are raised rails that have that gap underneath it.
Okay.
If you have a flush rail, that's where things get a little bit more specific, and you need a clamp that's more specific to each flush rail. Most of the companies out there that offer roof racks will offer what's called a fit kit or a variation of that sort of idea to attach to each rail. And you'll get a pretty similar attachment to what I was just showing with a couple of clamps that will kind of go on either side of that rail once again and attach there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let's just touch really quickly on truck toppers. They're very popular. What is the best system for a truck topper?
For sure. So when we're dealing with truck toppers, we're actually going to be dealing with a lot of the same parts as we would use for that naked roof system that we'd mentioned. The main difference is just how it's actually going to mount to the vehicle. So with a topper, we'll install what's called a track on the bottom of it, which will look a lot like this guy that we have a little mock of on the bottom. That'll run the whole length of the topper so you can slide your bars front and back. And then the actual bars and towers are the same as what we would mount once again onto that naked roof.
So how do those bars mount to that track? Can you show us the mechanism that makes that magic happen?
Yeah, down underneath here with this tower system, which is the same as what we've got on the wall, you're able to release it quickly in and out of this little pod, which is actually just directly mounted onto that track itself. So this pod piece is the actual piece that'll actually slide back and forth. And then just like that, you can take it on and off, take your tent on and off with a couple of buddies, and away you go.
Fantastic. Talk to me about Jeep Wranglers.
For sure. So when it comes to Jeep Wranglers, there's essentially two ways that you can mount racks. There's the cage style ones, which are offered through Cargo Masters or Congo Cage, Baja Series racks, all that fun stuff. If you want something that's going to look a little nicer though, especially, Rhino's where it's at with the Backbone series of racks. They have one specifically made for the Wrangler, which has supports on the inside of the hardtop, which is really nice because the hardtop can only support so much weight. So you can get that 300, I think, dynamic carrying capacity up on top there, no problem.
So great weight ratings for that Rhino Rack backbone system, supported inside structurally, and awesome for any of our rooftop tents. Thanks, James. Appreciate your help. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you have any more questions, reach out to Treeline Outdoors or Racks Unlimited.